can't be a coincidence. That is evidence of what they were doing. That is evidence of this plan. That is evidence of the preparation. We're moving along. February 15th, this is an important date because this is the day before the homicide. And it is important because the defendant, again, has contact with two of wrongdoers, as defense would phrase it, in the same day. It is significant. It is of evidentiary significance that Henry Tenon, the shooter, and Mario Fernandez are together the night before the murder. You saw a map. I don't have it here, but you can look at it. They are together at Potomac. Their devices are co-located for over 27 minutes, about 27 minutes. And we know Henry Tenon at this time is driving that truck. So there's 27 minutes, Mario Fernandez at Potomac with Henry Tenon. And then Mario Fernandez leaves Potomac, and that night he goes to the home of John Biggerstaff, the person who owns an unrecoverable, unfindable Glock 10mm firearm. And you heard some very unpleasant testimony about what Mr. Fernandez was doing there that night, but it is of evidentiary significance that he is having contact with two people with connections to that scene. The truck from Henry Tenon, the gun associated with a similar gun that Mr. Biggerstaff owned that he can't produce. This defendant has contact with both of them the night before Jared Bridegan is killed. That is significant. Individually, contact with one, contact the other can be explained away. Together, there's only one reasonable conclusion. They are perfecting this plan. February 16th, of course, Tenon murders Jared Bridegan. That's Henry Tenon. This is the part where I want to remind you of that instruction from the judge that she'll give you about principles. It is not necessary that we prove Mario Fernandez was present when the crime was committed. All we have to prove is that he encouraged, incited, assisted him, whether by explaining date night, by telling him who Jared was, by showing him the car, by giving him the gun. You can find him guilty based on that and that alone. You don't have to believe beyond a reasonable doubt he was there. But we know there were two people at the homicide scene that night. Henry Tenon on foot and somebody driving that truck. Who would Henry Tenon bring to commit a murder? He had to go commit a murder with someone. Who would he trust? Who would he bring? You don't bring a witness to a murder, you bring a co-defendant. Do you know why? Mutually assured destruction. You got to trust that that person and you are going to keep your mouths shut. And how can you do that? You can only do that if that person is equally guilty, equally culpable, and wants the same objective you do. And nobody wanted Jared Bridegan dead. Nobody that the evidence uncovered or the investigation uncovered more than this defendant and his wife. So if you're Henry Tenon and you're going to kill Jared Bridegan and you need help with it, you bring someone who wanted Jared Bridegan dead, who wanted to see it happen, who wanted to see it successful, and who wouldn't rat you out later. Mutually assured destruction. Henry Tenon had very few close associates. You heard from his phone records, he had a girlfriend, Peanut. He had Jeremy Ordway, his roommate, and he had Mr. Fernandez, who he's in frequent contact with during this time frame. And you saw in Mario Fernandez's phone that Henry Tenon, although his contact was deleted, that Mario Fernandez had a contact, Jerry at Potomac, Jeremy Ordway. And you will see that the phone number for Jeremy Ordway in the defendant's phone matches a phone number that was calling Henry Tenon's phone that night. The phone here by this green tower. While Tenon, who's on foot at this pink tower, these dots. We know he's there from the surveillance. We know he's there from the cell site with that phone linked to Henry Tenon 53. His phone for 7612 is using this green tower. And Jerry Ordway is calling this green tower phone during the homicide. And we know the truck, the person driving the truck, is separated from the person on foot. So if Jerry Ordway is calling this phone, that means it ain't Jerry Ordway. And if you eliminate Jerry Ordway from the list of associates of Henry Tenon, the people that he's close with, you're left with one person, the person with the motive, the person you bring to a crime, the person who wants you to commit that crime, and it's going to help you succeed in your endeavor. If you're Henry Tenon, you don't bring a witness, you bring Mario Fernandez to complete the mission he wanted you to complete. You bring your co-defendant. And we'll never know where Mario Fernandez really was that night because his phone stops communicating with the cell tower. And not just stops communicating with the cell tower, it stops recording those timing advance recorded data points. Even though there's a number of them before the murder, and even though there's a number of them after the murder, there just happens to be none of them. Starting at 7:10, when they end here on the slide, through 8:20. And there is no incoming, outgoing, text calls, etc. Agent Blythe testified even if you are on Wi-Fi at your house, your phone will still interact with the cellular tower and still record data in those records and still record those timing advance. And he said it's much more likely and makes more sense based on the totality of everything that the phone was off or in airplane mode, rather than it just happened to have connection issues on the timing advance and just happened to not be using his phone at the same time. And another thing that happened to happen here is that the last timing advance data point recorded is at 7:10:28 p.m. And when you go back and watch that surveillance video of the homicide truck leaving Pablo Hamlet before Jared Bridegan's killed, it pulls out at 7:12 p.m. So his phone, if it goes into airplane mode, as I'm arguing it does, or is turned off, is a minute and a half before that truck pulls out. And do you know where Mario Fernandez's residence is in relation to that truck parked at Pablo Hamlet? Over a fence, over a gravel parking lot. A minute and a half. In its totality, there is no other reasonable inference or explanation than he was getting in that truck to drive it, to take Tenon down, to complete the mission that he wanted. The mission that he wanted accomplished. No data. Mr. Dreiser brought out in cross-examination with Agent Blythe that there are other data points we didn't make a slide for, and I really wish we would have made a slide for this gap, if you want to call it, between 9/11 and 10:02, because that also coincides with that truck coming back to Pablo Hamlet, turning into that gravel lot, and then disappearing from sight. So if there's a gap there, it also happens to be during a time frame when that truck can't be seen. I'm sorry, when Mr. Tenon is coming back to that truck. So the gap at 8 p.m., Mr. Fernandez's phone turns back on at 8:20. We know that truck pulls into Pablo Hamlet at 8 and then pulls immediately into that gravel lot. And then this time frame, 9/11 to 10 p.m., we know that is when, based on the surveillance, Henry Tenon is trying to get back to that truck, trying to meet back up with the person in the truck, to get his keys, to get his phone, whatever he's doing. And that time gap here happens to be when Tenon and that person are successfully meeting up, because Tenon got his keys back. We know that because he ended up at Potomac at the end of the night. And here is a view of the back of Mr. Fernandez's home. This is the lot for, the front lot for the Discovery School, and the headmistress testified today that there is also that lot, as Detective John said, near the retirement community and at the back of the school. So over this fence, through this lot, around the back, into that back gravel lot is a reasonable inference you can make from the available evidence. February 17th, who does Mr. Fernandez spend his whole day with? John Biggerstaff. And John Biggerstaff said to Mr. Dreiser on cross-exam that Mario Fernandez didn't tell him about this murder, even though we know Detective Burrell and Detective Lamont made that notification late that night. Mr. Biggerstaff said, I think he told me a couple days or a week later, after I'd seen it on the news, he said, the kid's dad died. But this whole day where he's driving around setting up chairs and tables for a wedding, according to his testimony, Mr. Biggerstaff's, doesn't say a peep about this humongous event in his stepkid's life, his wife's life, his life, doesn't mention it. And you can decide based on your analysis and weighing of how credible Mr. Biggerstaff is if you believe that they didn't talk about it. They were talking about it. Ask yourself, what do you think they were saying? What do you think they were talking about? February 28th is a very interesting day as well in the timeline here. This is the day that the defendant, you saw in those bank records, transfers $50,000 from his flagship account to First Choice Home Rentals. $50,000 that should have